Welcome, everybody. I would like to welcome you on behalf of the S&D Group to this press conference on the debate about the Spanish abortion law. I have with me Iratxe García Pérez from our group and member of the FEM committee, and Swoboda, our group president. I will hand over the word to them.
Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming. The Socialist Group in the European Parliament firmly and fully rejects the draft bill presented by the Spanish People's Party, currently in power in Spain, has put forward in relation to abortion. There may be some in this House who say that subsidiarity should be paramount, and they do not wish to tackle such a fundamental issue. They would rather say that subsidiarity should prevail. But I believe that the rights of women should prevail over the principle of subsidiarity. This goes against dignity, it goes against fundamental rights, it goes against the right to choose for women, and also it constitutes a return to a previous period of history and a rolling back of rights that have been obtained by women in Spain and by half of the population of Europe over recent years. This draft bill has been presented by the People's Party, and it considers women as victims, takes away the right to choose. It puts everything in the hands of psychiatrists, judges, doctors. So what should be the right to choose for the woman is a right to choose held by others. Other people will have that right over the woman. And there is also a clear aspect of economic discrimination here. A woman who's reasonably well off will be able to go to another member state and get an abortion without too much difficulty. But a woman who does not have the economic resources to do that will either be condemned to be a mother against her will, or will be condemned to seeking out an illegal backstreet abortion which can have significant health risks for her. The umbrella organisation of women's movements in Spain is firmly opposed to this draft bill. We also count on the support and solidarity of many women outside Spain, many women from elsewhere in the EU who have stated their solidarity and have also spoken out elsewhere and said this draft bill should be withdrawn. We do not believe that there is any room for negotiation on this draft bill. The current law on sexual and reproductive rights works perfectly well in Spain. The statistics demonstrate that. There's been a drop in the number of abortions in recent years. We're ensuring that young women and men have a right to sexual health and reproductive health. There is no call for a change to the law in Spanish society. I would like to express my gratitude for the support of the Socialist Group, and I'd specifically like to thank Hannes for the support that he has given, the group has given, and also for coming to this press conference, because I believe that it is important to show that there are different visions of Europe. Social Democrats defend a vision of a Europe that moves forward both in terms of the economy but also in terms of our rights, and we cannot accept that there should be such a fundamental erosion of fundamental rights of women on the territory of the EU. So the struggle must continue. We must continue taking on board our own responsibilities in order to ensure that in the future of the work of this Parliament we can stand up and speak out on behalf of the indignation, outrage and shame that many women and men feel because of the fact that the People's Party in Spain has put forward this draft bill. As I say, there is no need to reform the current law. All they want to do is impose their minority morality on all of the women of Spain. So we will continue to do our utmost to ensure that that can't happen. And once again, Hannes, thank you very much for coming to the press conference.
Yes, I can immediately continue what Iratxe said. For us, as a Socialist and Democrats group, it is a basic principal issue. It's about the right of women to decide on their own body, on their own sexual relationships, on their own expression in society. Why should men, old men or younger men, decide about another bodies? Do you know any principle where it is the other way around? That women decide about what men have to do and should do? This is not happening. And therefore, I think this legislation is absolutely against the principal freedoms we have to recognize for everybody. I come from a country, Austria, where we started the reform in the early 70s. Socialist government tried in the beginning only very cautiously, but women protested. And women, with the same arguments you brought forward, said, it's not about abortion or not. It's about illegal abortion, where a lot of doctors and others win a lot of money and endanger the health of women. Or it's about legal abortion. In the end, less legal abortion, less abortion, or more abortion. More abortion means mostly illegal abortion, with risk, with big health risk to the woman and to the child. And on the other hand, you have legal abortion, but in the end of the day, less abortions, because it is part of expression of the freedom of women in society. I fear that if that would be going through in Spain, that others, of course, in other countries would see that as an encouragement. Because we live in a society where we have to recognize that achievements we once had are contested again by some of the right-wing, so-called moral groups. And there's a closeness between the right-wing and the extreme right on many of these issues. It's a real campaign we have in Europe against abortion, against same-sex marriage and relationship, and these kind of tendencies to reduce civil liberties, especially of women, but maybe also of gay people. This is something we want to fight at the beginning, at the start. And the last remark, I'm really surprised that for Mr. Rajoy and some of his friends, there are no other problems in Spain than the question of abortion. Unemployment, disastrous economic situation, emigration of young people who don't find a job. All these are the issues where I think Europe and every nation, especially also Spain, should care for. It's a real distraction and diversion from the real problems in Spain. But again, this is a pattern we see in several countries, that if you cannot deal and tackle the real problems, you find some, let's say, artificial problems, and then appeal to the moral authorities or the moral consciousness, maybe with some religious arguments and so on. And therefore, I think it is I'm grateful for your activities, because when I read that in the paper, then I thought it's not true. It's not. It's a fake message. But unfortunately, it is true, and I'm very, very happy that the Spanish delegation is here, really united and very active in fighting against that, because your fight in Spain is also a fight for basic liberties and freedoms in the European Union.
Thank you. Are there any questions from your side? Yes, Lara, please.
Lara Malvesi de la agencia EFE.
From FA agency. I have several questions for Iratxe. First of all, what was the reaction of MEPs of other nationalities? Have people told you that they were surprised, or taken aback, outraged? What reaction have you had? What feedback? Secondly, what do you think are the chances of the European Commission taking a different standpoint on the principle of subsidiarity and the relationship between subsidiarity and fundamental freedoms? And finally, for Mr. Swoboda, will this be a key point of the European socialists? We don't yet know if it'll be a key plank of the Spanish socialists. On the first point, the reaction from fellow members of the European Parliament. There, what I would say is that we've received the support of many members of the European Parliament who are concerned about this issue. We say you cannot take rights that have been obtained for granted, and that's exactly what you're seeing happen now in Spain, and it could happen somewhere else. It's a kind of wake-up call. There are many countries in Europe that do have similar legislation to what we currently have in Spain. In other words, time limits for abortion. But there are ideological movements that could start rolling back those historic achievements of the last few years in the EU. So, as I say, we have received the support of many members of this House, and I hope that tomorrow in the discussions in plenary that will be made clear. On your other question as to what the chances are of the European Commission adopting a position on the matter, to be quite honest, I don't think there's much chance. I don't have much hope that the Commission will make some kind of statement defending the right to choose or defending the rights of women. I think there's a grassroots movement. I think society is calling out for this. This House represents the people of Europe, European sovereignty, and therefore, if people are calling for this, if society is calling for this, we should be the voice of that. That's the role of the Parliament. So, leaving aside for the moment what may happen in a debate and what the Commission may say, more importantly than that, I think that in the plenary session of the European Parliament there should be a discussion of the rights of women, there should be a discussion of the right to choose, and there should be a discussion of this very fundamental European value, which is equality, that you can't have one group of society in Europe taking decisions on behalf of another group. These kind of reproductive health decisions are personal, private decisions, and it's up to women to take those decisions.
Yes, for me it is a principal issue and the main issue of the campaign. Why? Social democracy can only convince citizens if they have two elements in their strategy, the social element and the civil rights or the human rights element. Social democracy has two legs. The one leg is economic and social policy, the other is defending the freedom. And defending is basically, of course, the freedom of women in this case, and therefore for me it is absolutely clear that wherever this is put into doubt, the countries, then we have to go in and have a clear position. It's not about for or against abortions, but the right of the woman. And that is the main element of the campaign, and we should not be diverted by the right wing saying we are fighting against abortion. On the contrary, as I said before, those who want to take the right and want to make it illegal, at the end of the day will have more and more risky abortions than if you allow it.
Are there other questions from your side? Okay, please.
Bonjour. Est-ce que vous dites...
Well, you said earlier that you were wondering about whether this would encourage other countries to follow the Spanish example. Which countries were you thinking of when you said that? at least in terms of how the Spanish law will be defended?
I think if you see what happens in Poland, what happens in Hungary, what happens even in Lithuania, you have this kind of narrow-minded policies and tendency to restrict sexual rights and freedoms, and including also abortion. And therefore, I think it's very, very important that one gives a clear signal in Spain itself and from side of our group, and I hope for many others in the European Parliament, against this kind of tendency. You know that we had recently this controversy about the Australia report. If everything would have gone right in the sense technically right, we wouldn't even have got a majority for the Australia report. Small majority, but we would have got, but there was several technical and translation mistakes. But in any way, I think it is important also what Iratxe said, that this Parliament, or at least the members of this Parliament, come with a very clear view that basic rights is not an issue of individual, governmental or national issue. Basic rights we were fighting for centuries, because in some countries it's already for centuries, is something for the European Union as such. How can we give a good example to the outside world if we go back in important steps of an advancement?
Okay. Yes, please.
Et comment expliquez-vous?
So how do you explain this movement then? Earlier you were talking in Spain about getting ownership of the area dealing with moral issues and ethical issues, you know, with the crisis. Could there be other reasons? Maybe you could give us the benefit of your analysis of this movement that's coming back.
In many cases, also if you look, for example, to the time between the First and the Second World War, already at that time you saw with the fascist movement how they did not solve the economic and social issue, but they took up other issues, scapegoating one group of the society. They are responsible for the crisis, taking up also, you know, this kind of, in the fascist movement, mother is, you know, something extraterrestrial, godlike, and you have to save and the children, and you cannot allow any kind of abortion and interruption of pregnancy. So I don't compare, please don't understand me, I don't compare, but I think you have always tendencies in times of crisis to go back to the so-called moral issue, which is not a moral issue. It's an issue of political restriction. It's an issue of restrict the freedoms. This is the answer. The answer of right-wing politicians very often in times of economic and social crisis, if you have no remedy to attack the crisis, you restrict the freedom of certain parts of your society. And this is the answer that we can absolutely not accept.
Además, hay otra cuestión.
There's another point that I think we should bear. It is indeed the case that the financial crisis is leading to disillusionment with politics. And I think the People's Party is very well aware of that. And I feel that the fact that they put forward the draft bill at this time could be an attempt to mobilize some people with rather more extreme conservative views. They talk about, for instance, not playing the party political card with the issue of abortion, but I think they are actually playing electoral politics with this issue of women's rights in order to play to the gallery of the more extreme conservatives. If the People's Party withdraws this draft bill, then we won't be continuing to bang the drum on this issue. if they withdraw, we'll leave it there. But this infringement of women's rights is something that has come from an initiative on their side.
Apparemment, le Parti populaire.
Well, it seems like the PP have lost 12.5 points in the polls subsequent to this bill being introduced. So, do you think they will withdraw it?
Han salido.
There were some recent polls that appeared to indicate that there was a connection between the draft bill on abortion and their drop in popularity. What I would say is that if you have a law which is basically unnecessary, that infringes upon rights, that brings in inequality and disenfranchises people, then inevitably that will have an impact on support for that political party. Obviously they will have to see what they wish to do about this. It's their decision. They've already presented the draft bill at a cabinet meeting, and until they say we withdraw it, we will be standing up and speaking out in Spain and also, I hope, socialists across Europe.
Thank you very much. We have to close. Thank you for your participation.